We have with us Mr. Uday Khare, who is a partner at Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas. So good to have you here. Thanks for coming and talking to us. What should I just wanted to ask you. I mean, railways is a sector that not much public-private partnership has happened in the railway sector. Why do you think it has not happened, and how can railways make it happen?
No, thanks. That's a very interesting question, and one which, if I see particularly with reference to, say, other sectors, other infrastructure sectors in India, railways has had a bit of a challenge for a number of reasons. I think for the moment, let's just talk about freight, because I think passenger side has a completely different angle to it. And now, if I look at freight in freight carriage, there's a number of places where you could have effective private participation. Right? The biggest of which probably is going to be in infrastructure creation, so capital expenditure in infrastructure creation, as well as probably maintenance of assets. Now, there are some thoughts, and this is something that is under contemplation as well by the railways. They've come out with a couple of new models, one of which is the development partner model, and one of which is the HAM model, hybrid annuity maintenance model. Now, the development partner model is quite, bold and ambitious. It envisages, the complete train operations, the terminal operations, etc. But I think the way for us to go forward is to be, is to keep it simple. I think because railways is, it's an integrated network, right? So it's not so easy to match, let's say, capital expenditure on a particular segment with the returns you can make from just that segment, right? If I may compare it to, let's say, roads, right? In roads, you have a set highway portion, you have a toll booth, and the rates for the toll booth are linked to, the traffic on that particular segment, right? Not the case. You can't just replicate that in the railways. If you're booking a freight carrier, you're booking it somewhere across the country. It's going over a huge part of the network, including probably the portion that the private partner has built, right? So, in that sense, it's difficult to correlate just an independent functioning business model just on a particular segment. So, therefore, what is the best way if you're talking about infrastructure development? I think it's probably best to keep it simple to start with. So, construction, asset maintenance, and some simple asset operation. Human resources, operation of rolling stock, operation of terminals, something which maybe for the moment should be best left in public hands. Now, gradually, you could possibly increase that. Now, if you look at sort of rail PPPs worldwide, that's typically the model. So, the private sector gets compensated for the capital expenditure, for their usage of their track, right? Basis on a per kilometer tonnage basis. So, that's probably the way to go. We keep it simple, and that's also where the private sector in India has the expertise and has the efficiencies. Right, so that's one part of it. But the other big part of it, and this was brought out very well in the session today that we had, is that really the need of the hour is not just track infrastructure, but also multimodal logistics. So terminal outside, and I think Sri Aryavar had mentioned it, that about only about 4 out of 12 rupees per kilometer tonnage is actually on the rail cost. The rest is all on the transportation from there.
That is the first and the last mile you're saying, or outside the rail network?
Yes, outside the rail network, exactly. So the first and the last mile. And there, in terms of building multimodal terminals, in terms of possibly expanding associated infrastructure, let's say, good sort of road connectivity from that point on, up to let's say if you're talking, let's say a port or an ultimate destination, right? That infrastructure, that's where there's a huge degree of potential. And in order to exploit that potential, I think you can have many different forms of PPP models. So you could have, say, terminal, just building, running a terminal. You could have just track connectivity to a particular, last mile connectivity to a particular location. And there you can also experiment with many different forms of PPP. So, you can make them sort of independent, open for bidding. You could have, let's say, if it's a port owner, or if it's a particular industry, that industry owner. And there's already evidence of that.
I mean, there is already a linkage from the ports to the nearest railway, Indian railway track. Some of these ports have done. For instance, Pipavav.
Yes.
For instance, Mundra.
Yes.
They've all done that, and even JSW has done that.
Correct.
So they do it from their port to the nearest Indian railway line, and they operate it. I mean, I don't. It's a pure BOT model. I don't know what is the revenue mechanism and all that. They apportion it with the railways.
Yeah.
But that's one thing that I can remember offhand.
Yes.
But otherwise, station development, or for that matter, passenger trains, these didn't take off actually.
Station development didn't. Yes. Passenger trains, I think, would be possibly a little bit ambitious at this point of time. See, if I compare it to other sectors, right? If I compare it to, say, transmission, right, which is similar in the sense of you're building a portion of a larger network. There, it's back calculated. So you have the cost of your laying down of your land, and that goes into your transmission fee, right? So you are getting paid as the owner of a portion of the transmission line, commensurate to the capex you have put in, right? But you can't do that, particularly with passenger. You cannot do that, at least at the moment.
I think passenger is a long run affair. I don't think it will have a back, because there are too many ifs and buts there.
Correct.
They're saying that railway trains will get preference over passenger trains, and if there is any, even the slightest of delay, they will be penalized and all that. That's what I gather, when I was, looking up those details. But it's a private sector will not be interested in taking those risks. It's heavily loaded in against them.
Yes, exactly. So, which is exactly why I was saying, to begin with, maybe we have sort of slightly simpler models. It need not be just BOT. It could be like a HAM, for example. Right?
But are they doing it? I mean, are they really working on that?
These were announced. The HAM model has been announced as a model that is under consideration. I mean, I think we will see possibly execution maybe in some time, but it has been announced.
Track HAM on for the railway tracks, you mean?
Yeah, a particular network. So it could be laying new tracks. It could be multi-tracking existing tracks. It could be
that is double. I mean, what do you call it? Double. I mean, parallel to that, another line.
Yes. Another line, or building, terminals where there are none. So yes, it's under contemplation for sure. Yeah.
Ideally, they should have. They if they are so interested in that, they can even look at monetizing DFC, right?
Yes, and actually DFC was envisaged at some point of time as being a PPP, but I think it didn't take off like a private sector.
Even after having put in a so-called EPC format or from their own funds, they can, if they want, really, they can monetize it by saying that, this is a long length of route, overcomes.
Yes,
they can do that.
Like the TOT model in roads.
TOT. If you want to monetize it, existing, all the risks are over. The line is operational.
Yes.
There is no risk involved for the private operator. You operate it for 10 years or 15 years and then you roll it over. That would be.
But even there, I think we need to make a distinction between infrastructure maintenance and locos and carriers, right?
That's a typical.
That above rail services is a bit difficult. Like below rail services, I think you could do that. Above rail
just
services,
like container train operations, like that's the only one tangible, positive that has come out of railway privatization. Container train operations. They'll only do train operations. They will invest, buy rakes, and then they operate. But they are operating on Indian railways. They say they'll charge you for tracks and access and signaling and filana all those kind of things. That's the revenue that these people have to give them as upfront fee or whatever it is. So that's the only thing that we have seen that.
Yes. And you can do that on, say, specific lines, specific, segments where you have, where there's a short sort of movement of traffic and rates, which actually leads to another question, right? I mean, you have existing demand centers, but you also need to push further demand on segments.
Right.
I mean, we are talking about an infrastructure gap, but equally in other situations we have seen where infrastructure has developed, but there has become a demand gap, right? So here I think also, but there's a lot, I mean, particularly for, let's say, large industries, even PSUs, steel, coal, oil and gas, you can have, if you have infrastructure creation, you can have anchor sort of customers in a sense. So there's scope there as well. I think.
But the point here is that, in normal line where both goods train and passenger train run, and there is a PPP, and then there is no regulator at the moment. There is no tariff regulator for railways, and then the PPP operator will say that, look, I have to get my investments back. So I should be given the flexibility to raise my rates. So how do you distinguish between goods and passenger? I mean, unless the government clearly mentions in the tender document that, look, you have to only raise the goods rate. I mean, in which case, the already high cross subsidization will, further go up.
I think let's distinguish between passenger and freight, right? Possibly in freight. I think passenger is too far for that. I think for freight, possibly you could do it where you have actual freight rate for that segment, which is different from, let's say, other segments.
Correct.
Right? But then you've got to have the demand to support that, right? Because otherwise, what's going to happen is, if you have, let's say, this just as part of one network, you have someone who's sending goods from point A to point B. If it's going to be more expensive to send them through a particular route because it's a private operator, they may choose to send it through another route or send it by road altogether.
Yeah, correct. Right? Correct.
So
it's ultimately it's a pass through.
Correct.
Whatever that the goods that the cargo owner, if you sends it by that, and he has to pay higher, he will recover it from somebody else, the public.
Yes, he will recover,
and it gets all transmitted to the public or whoever is the end user.
Correct.
So you have to be careful about that.
Exactly. So you have to be careful about that, and it requires also integrated. How do you? It's also a cost allocation issue. Quite frankly, right? Because again, when you have certain movement of goods going across multiple segments, you have how do you collect the freight at one end, right? How do you allocate it amongst the various segments, right? Now there, possibly you say allocate it higher here in a particular segment where significant capex that is one possible solution, but then it's the rest of the railways that suffers, right?
That's
that's
interesting, but this is an interesting conversation. Thank you so much.